Really quick, before we get started, if you are blessed by this ministry, if you're blessed by this platform, anything that I bring to the table, I ask you to partner with me via Patreon. Go to patreon.com/TruthSeekah and you unlock rewards, my entire discography of music, webinars, meditations, weekly hangouts, and so much more. Patreon.com/TruthSeekah. Go check it out.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah Podcast.
Gargoyles, psychics, everything's ungodly. Dark Savage.
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian.
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark sided stuff.
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm your host, TruthSeekah. Welcome to the TruthSeekah Podcast. Excited and delighted to be with you as always. Today, my guest is Elizabeth Parker. Elizabeth, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you. Excited about our talk. My daughter bought me for my birthday Haunted Mobile. And so been checking it out, and I'm a Mobile resident myself. So, looking at some of the obscure hauntings, if you will, some of the ones that kind of go overlooked, and hearing about people's stories about the afterlife and hauntings, and trying to make sense of it, as a lot of people are, and especially right now, the paranormal and the afterlife, near-death experiences, all of that stuff is getting a lot of momentum. So with my interest in it, I figured I'd love to have you on and talk to you about some of these cases, some of these stories, testimonies, and get your take on it and the afterlife and what you think is going on. So again, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you very much. And I think we're tracking right in line, because when I first began assembling these stories, originally it was like over 20 years ago, which sounds like forever, and it feels like forever. But at that time, you can't imagine the reaction I got going, particularly to the public places, and asking, "Do you have ghosts?" It still was such a weird topic then. And the way the world has changed in 20 years is unbelievable to me. And I think that ghosts kind of opened the door to a lot more of the mystical world, and gave people a way to get in there. So like you, I'm blending the ghost and the mysticism and all that, because it is definitely evolving as we understand it and as we learn more about it. And such a change from when I was coming up, and you could only get a few books, and you could watch great old TV shows like In Search Of and things like that. And you really had to struggle to find your ghost. It was such a niche thing. And then it just exploded. At that time, when I was learning and passionately interested forever, ghosts were a problem to be solved. And in the great books like Holzer, you could get one of his books and he would talk about going to a family's house, and the family were like, we don't care. He would bring a medium, and the medium would try to explain what was going on. And they were like, yeah, we just want it gone. Just make it go away. Just get rid of it, like a squirrel in the attic. So at that time, it was such a problem to be fixed, an anomaly into our regular working life that needed to be fixed because it shouldn't be there. And now just imagine how that's changed over 20 years with the explosion of the interest in the paranormal. And on TV, I think you could never not find a ghost show 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, on streaming or online or on YouTube. And now that we've evolved, I'm more interested in not so much are ghosts there, because I think a lot of people believe that now. It's why are they there? How do we understand it? What's going on? Let's look deeper into this and not just simply consider it, the squirrel in the attic that needs to be kicked out.
Yeah. when I first emailed you, and I guess you checked out my website or some of the past interviews, and you saw the religious overtones, undertones to the work, and you seemed like you were kind of startled a little bit, just because we know how religious people can act towards, first of all, anything with just a blanket statement. Ghosts are demons. I mean, and that's, once they say it, now they've got it filed in a box of the demon box or the devil box or whatever. So then that's done. Now we can move on to other things. And so you were asking me a little bit more about, why I wanted to interview you and those things. That, hey, it's not going to be a religious debate or nothing like that. I'm a student. I'm a seeker, and I know that all of us hold pieces of, again, what you're compiling with all of these stories that are like a compilation that begin to make this whole phenomenon make a little bit more sense, a little bit more. Maybe it brings more questions to the table, and we know that it does, versus thinking that we have it all figured out. But I will say that my work as well was something shunned and laughed at, 15 years ago, mocked, and now it's celebrated. Now I'm winning awards for doing what I've been doing while it was in that, with the religious overtones as well, coming from a Christian minister, who's now embraced the question, asking the deeper questions in life. And so I do approach this from a biblical perspective, but I think that we're not able to understand those biblical perspectives until we experience them in our lives. And then when we go back and read, we're like, oh wow, that could be what this is talking about now, that I have a little bit more context, versus vice versa, having it figured out and then seeing the phenomena and brushing it off, So the interest in this is definitely through the roof. And I think that what we've gone through the last couple of years has definitely helped with the afterlife. Again, the near-death experience stuff. We talk about UFOs and things like that as well. And right now, all of that is gaining momentum and interest because people are asking questions.
Right. There's a great classic Christian work about faith, and I think the title is "Your God is Too Small." I think.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could remember the author correctly, but that's how I feel about it. All of my searching and continually asking questions, it doesn't limit my faith in the divine. It grows my faith in the divine, because it just makes it bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm just in awe. I certainly don't have answers about what ghosts are. I have my own experiences and my own feelings and understandings, but I am not the end all be all about what ghosts are. I'm not dogmatic. And so it doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes you do get ambushed by people who want to bring everything down to, as you say, the most simplistic level and say, oh, well, the Bible says, you should do this. So I didn't want to be ambushed, but I do think that ghosts are an entryway into expanding your ideas about what's reality.
Mm-hmm.
And just because you might begin to think new things about the nature of reality, it's not diminishing or downplaying your faith. To me, it just expands faith, because it is so much bigger, so much bigger.
Yeah, that's what I found, and that's probably why I got into a lot of this as well, because it proves the afterlife. It proves something's going on.
Right. And they couldn't, and before, we couldn't bring people back from the brink. We were not medically equipped to save people who had died and bring them back. And it's just in these, the very end of the 20th century that we had the medical technology to do that. And once we started doing that, people began to have these stories about what had happened to them. And it was interesting to me that the scientific trope about that is, well, your brain, there's nothing after you die, and your brain is simply flooding you with chemicals so you won't be afraid. But to me, I think, well, if I'm not going to remember it, why do I need to, if I'm going to be dead and there's nothing, why do I need to remember my death as a pleasant experience? So just in that, it kind of refutes their own argument. There's very much, there's absolutely an afterlife. Absolutely. It just goes, there's no ending. It goes on and on.
It's so weird.
You can't squash a human soul. It's infinite and eternal. It's amazing.
They say energy can't be created nor destroyed, but it can be transferred into and the cup or the vessel that holds it is able
Right.
to able to change, and that's what it seems like it's happening. But maybe, you know, I think a lot of things are happening, and so it's in that, again, there's the simplicity, like this is what's happening with ghosts, or this is, well, what if there's 17 things happening at once, and you're
Right.
experiencing
Exactly.
5 of them,
Right.
and that's probably more like, you know, what's going on. So talking about local legend and lore, we can get into some of these stories, which I want to do. And I found out that most every state or every city has some similar ones that are kind of like folklore that they just kind of repeat, you know, where I don't know if it's where spirits like to hang out or they show up around certain places, but Crybaby Bridge here close to me and on Callioca Road, and I don't know if that's considered Saraland or not, but are you familiar with that legend?
Haunted Saraland, Callioca Road, and the Crybaby Bridge. I have people who will swear up and down that they have heard the baby cry at Crybaby Bridge. And then, of course, there's the plantation
Yeah.
out there, the big haunted plantation. And there's a great, I heard this secondhand. I had some friends who, long time ago, were trying to do some research into our local ghost legends and tales. And a woman contacted them from Saraland and begged them to come up. And she reported astonishing things, having seen apparitions of soldiers. And I mean, not Civil War soldiers, I mean, colonial, pre-state, pre-American soldiers marching in formation, and things in her house and stuff moving around. And the problem was that every time my friend who was working on this compilation would go up to interview her, the lady would ghost her. She'd bug out on her. She would never show up. And my friend had driven up there at one point to try to go have a scheduled interview at her house, and the woman never came to the door. But my friend began to experience strange things like weird electrical dysfunctions with her equipment and weird things on her answering machine, and all kind of craziness happened. Even though she was never able to actually get in the house and sit down and talk with this woman, she still had crazy things happen. And when she finally just gave up, everything stopped. So there's a lot of interesting energy out in Saraland for sure.
Yeah. I mean, this land, you know, for sure. Just, you know, the South is crazy. And you talk about, you know, the plantation and Crybaby Bridge and those things, like, you know, we used to go down there as teenagers and down the dirt road that led to the plantation and see the like giant black man who still roams the lands, and we saw him. We
Yeah.
swore we
Yeah.
saw somebody back there, and I believe the houses and stuff are supposed to be vacant. There's not supposed to be anyone back there. I think you drive past the house getting to it and seeing that, it's like, turn around, get out of here, you know, looking for these things as teenagers, and you know, people are experiencing this stuff in the South. And we have the battlefield that's, you know, where some of the last battles were fought. And
Yeah, I live there. I live in the battlefield, and we have ghosts, and we all of the neighbors in this neighborhood, everybody has a ghost. Everybody's seen them. Everybody's had them. I've had them. They're here. I've seen them. I've seen physical apparitions. I have seen them. They are here. But here's the thing: are they stuck here, or are they simply living in a reality that sometimes we're able to tune into? When you would go out to the plantation with your friends and you guys are all hyped up and you're teenagers, so you've got tons of life energy and you're just all ready to go, did that make you receptive to looking into a different reality, a
yeah,
different world? Did we have a little bleed through there? Can we say that the caretaker, the infamous caretaker up there, is really a ghost, or is he simply doing his thing on a continuing level of reality that was created? I have really, at this point, I think a lot of earthbound and residual spirits fall under the category of an energetic imprint. When we have a physical life, as we talked about a little bit before, the soul goes into a container, right? So it's kind of like having like going into witness protection program, the best witness protection program in the world. You're going to come to Earth and be a human, and this is going to be your name, and this is what you look like, and these are your genetics, your family, where you live, your cultural identity. Okay, go. And when you spend a lifetime inhabiting that role, that personality, I think it energetically takes on a life of its own. So I wonder a lot if earthbound spirits are not so much a soul that is stuck here because they didn't go to the light. Because I personally do not think that the divine can ever lose a soul. I, I mean, that's impossible to me. But I'm wondering if in a traumatic event, in a highly emotional event, in an abrupt death, in a person who had terrible unsolved issues, if that personality that they inhabited without a soul breaks off and kind of does its own thing, it kind of, is that what gets stuck here? Is that animated personality what is stuck or earthbound here? Um, and in that case, is it really such a mission to try to save it? It's a big thing. The big thing that turned people on a lot about ghost and paranormal was a sense of, oh, I can free this trapped earthbound ghost. And in a sense, I think that you can release a fragment of a personality and let it go back into pure divine energy. But I really wonder a lot now if the souls we would consider a classic earthbound or residual spirit ghost is actually just that still enlivened, juiced up personality. And particularly when you go into places like haunted hotels or big haunted public buildings where there's a constant influx of new people and new energy to keep that personality amped up, are we doing it a disservice and keeping it here long past its expiration date? That's where I kind of get a little hinky about how a lot of the investigation stuff goes, and a lot of the people who will buy an old building, infamously haunted old abandoned institution building or prison, and then let people pay to come ghost hunt. I kind of wonder if that's maybe the most positive use of our resources.
Yeah, it's it's people trying to figure it out too. Like if that is the narrative that you go with and you want to help, I'm only trying to help, but maybe in the end you're hurting. And it's, a lot of it's, I would say, birthed out of ignorance, but they mean well. Even the people with the blanket statements, like many of them mean well, even to put them in a compartmentalized or whatever. So, and we are figuring it out. But like you said, just with that little bit, it's more complicated than we know, because maybe the soul is free. The soul goes into another form, another container, but some type of imprint, an energetic imprint, whether it is the personality or it's just a memory that is like burned into this, in between the realms, that is playing on a loop. A lot of people believe that.
And that's the point exactly. Is there's so many possibilities here that and please don't misunderstand. I'm not trying to be critical of people, and like you say, I do think they have the best intentions, and I think even the people that do it kind of as a hobby, and they go in and they taunt and they yell and they have a great time scaring themselves. Even that is a reaching to understand. But I think that I wish people would think about more about what they're doing. Think about what you're doing. If there are many realities, if there's unlimited potential types of existence in this extraordinary divine world, if you're just going in and treating a haunting like a squirrel in the attic that needs to be yelled at and got rid of and scared, it's a weird creature that has no relation to you. Well, but they were us. Ghosts were us. So they are related to us. They are part of this. And everybody, in my experience, absolutely everybody is connected and everything is connected. And I find in many, many cases, people who have hauntings and encounters, if you really will work through it and try to go beyond the squirrel in the attic, get rid of it thing, you find that the people who experience hauntings and experience ghosts, often there is a tie-in to their own life somewhere. And everything that is happening to them is ultimately for their growth and experience and to help them understand further. So that's kind of my thing now, is that the good news is everybody believes in ghosts, and the bad news is everybody believes in ghosts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I wish we could evolve now that people are open to it. Really like to see some involvement in what is it exactly. And I had some folks that I worked with who were having trouble, and you can't force, you can't make a spirit, a personality fragment, a retained energy, whatever it is. You can't make them go if they don't want to go. There's still free will. But if you can't make them go, then you can change the energy. You can change that energetic setting on the dial. And I've had success in raising, kind of like building an overpass over a home. So they're still there doing their thing. Let's build them an overpass so they don't walk through your living room. So in that way, the people are relieved, but this other energy that I don't understand, and I'm not wise enough to understand the function of, still can continue doing its thing for however long it
Yeah.
needs to do it, or whatever it is that it's doing.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to find a way to make it work for everybody, and to be considerate. You have to go in with compassion, even when people are really freaked out and really scared. You have compassion for them, but you have to have compassion for the ghosts too, because what if the ghosts don't understand us any more than we understand them, because their reality is so altered as they don't have a physical reality anymore. So what if they don't understand us and find it just as puzzling? So going in with an eye toward trying to help everything have context and make some sense, and try to help everybody get to a good place. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And I really would love to see more of that in some of the investigative stuff that I see that goes in and reflexively says, oh, it's a demon.
Yeah.
Because that's really good TV.
Yeah, it is. The scare stuff, it's clickbait. It gets a lot more clicks. And I've had my involvement in a lot of that, and I still do. But like, even with the demon thing, they're saying that's a demon. Well, a demon at some point from the biblical narrative had a body at one time, but now it doesn't, and so it's stuck. It's in limbo, waiting to transition, whether it's going to ascend back into heaven or go down to another level of hell or something. And then it seems like they would inhabit people. They would look for which a person is a house. So for me, I think all of that text is multidimensional, because it talks about that a person is a house, and then we have spirits in us. So here comes Jesus going along, and he's noticing maybe some type of poltergeist type of nefarious spirits that are living inside of other humans, other houses, and he's like, hey, get out of there, leave that person alone, because I know what you're doing, because you're controlling him, you're making him do things that aren't conducive or for his best benefit, cutting themselves and foaming at the mouth, and crazy person turns into, cast the demon out, and they go and set free. But even Jesus looks at those spirits with compassion, and he does. And they're saying, hey, are you here to torment us before the time? No, certainly not. Leave that person alone, go find you somewhere else to live, and go into those pigs. That'd be a great place for you to go. And sends them into the pigs, and we know that story in the Bible. But it goes to say that he didn't send them to the pit or to the fire or to torment or whatever. And I've seen a lot of people in the spiritual movement and in the Christian movement for sure, and this was my understanding, that they'll cast a demon out of somebody in deliverance ministry, and that person will kind of get freedom, and because they went through trauma. And that's how it got, traumatic experience, birthed something that's heavy and dark and stuck with them. And now it has a personality, and it leaves the person, but then they try to send it to the pit and send it to hell. And it wasn't until another friend of mine was like, yeah, I don't know if that's our job, to send demons to the light or to hell or to destroy them. Like, we don't know. It was they needed a home or whatever. But yeah, to look at it objectively like that. But now it just raises more questions. Where do we send it, And
right. No, I agree that's not our job. That's not our job. Our job is to respond compassionately to a person who is suffering. And if they are suffering because just as you would in physical life, if you hang out with people that aren't good for you, you can be terribly influenced. If you're at a really weak moment because you've had trauma, or because some things have gotten the better of you and you've gotten out of balance. It's like when you talk about a house, that's like having a house in a neighborhood where you don't put up a fence and you leave your door unlocked, and anybody can just walk through your house. We have to keep our own sense of self, our good boundaries, our healthy energy system, to keep us from being vulnerable to that. Because just as we would, try to stay away when we're feeling good and we're all sassy and good, it's easy to stay away from people who aren't good for us. When we're feeling low and we're down and we're weak, we're like, I don't care, I'll hang out with him, I don't care, fine, I don't care, who cares? And then boy, you can really get some nasty attachments, and you can get spiritual attachments just like you can get not, physical attachments if you're in a dark place. So people don't give themselves enough credit for how their own efforts at feeling feeling whole, helping themselves be whole, helping heal themselves, the tremendous power that a person has to, with the divine source, heal themselves, and all of that spiritual support. We give ourselves such a hard time, and we think that we're not capable of that. But I think when someone is able to heal themselves of an attachment, or if they have help come in, a person who's skilled to come in and help them, that person is not really concerned with the negative entity or demon. That person's first consideration is to heal the afflicted person, because an afflicted person who's whole and tight and good is not going to have an open window or a door wide open for that negativity to get back in. So getting rid of the demon, once you heal, if you help a person heal up and give them the tools to maintain their healing and help them find their way to healing and their way to spirituality, whatever that way is that's right for them, if they're whole and good and complete, they're not going to be prone to that. What happens to that negative energy? Not my problem. Go somewhere. You can't stay here. Go away. I don't care. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, but go away. You can't, you have to help a person heal themselves and help them restore confidence in themselves and their divine connection, however they interpret that. And negative energy, of whatever source, I don't think we will ever get away with it, because people do a great job of ginning it up themselves. And we need to be a little more awake, I think, to our own boundaries and tools and things that we can do to keep ourselves whole and good, so that we can, deflect a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, that's one of my big critiques. I have a lot of friends who are ministers and in that deliverance ministry, where they like specialize in casting out demons. And it gets tons of views, and really it's people are getting help, but they're being exploited too. I'll say that. But my critique on that is like, when that thing leaves that person, right? It has to, first of all, the spirit or whatever has to have somewhere to go, but that person has to be willing to shut the door, like you're saying. And like the scripture, like Jesus talks like, hey, there's consequence. You might be better off letting that thing live with you. Like, even if it is a demon or whatever, let him stay with you. And I say that facetiously, but because it says that they leave and go get 7 stronger spirits to try to come back if that person's house isn't swept clean and the door's not shut. The idea of addictions and things like that are demonic oppressions, and some people's, everybody's, what works for one person doesn't work for the next. And you're talking about people being susceptible, like even going to a bar room or something, or having a drink of wine because you can, it doesn't mean somebody else can, because that represents trauma. It represents years of abuse of something that you've overcome, and then now you've opened that door. And so, see you tomorrow. One person's okay, the other person goes on, they fall into a dark place. And so that's the idea, is to make sure that to do inventory. Inventory.
You have to meet people. You have to meet people where they are, and you have to speak to people in their own language. And if you've got someone who has grown up in the church and they feel like they literally have a demonic oppression, and that is their language, and that is how it works through their filters, then you got to bring in somebody that they have faith in, who speaks their language and who understands them and says, I get you, demon, got it, I get you, and we're going to work together, and we're going to do this. But then there's the whole other story afterward, even with ghosts, even when I've gotten helped move along unwanted energies and things manifesting in a house, I always tell the folks that I'm working with, you can't, after I leave, you can't run around the house looking to see if the ghost is coming. know, you can't get your K2 out because everybody's got an EMF reader or something. You can't go running around and see if you can find them. You have to do you have to have a sense of this is done, right? I know, because they're fun, right? Because they're fun. So you gotta when you get it done and you close that door, regardless of what experience you're trying to have put behind you,
Yeah.
you got to close that door, and you can't go running around looking for it. You will invite it right back in.
Yeah.
I mean, you can bring them right back out. I can work and get them out of there, but
I know,
if
right?
you want them back, you can bring them right back in.
That's the crazy
And
thing.
that's just the vulnerability of being human. We're curious, and we're human, and you can't fault people. I can't fault people for having a K2 meter and an EMF reader and a gizmo, voice box gizmo thing to go in and try to talk to ghosts and all that. I can't fault them for that. I appreciate the curiosity and the openness to consider that something beyond what we see may live, and we may want to explore that and understand it more. I don't fault anybody, but I wish there was a little more time spent on the other side of it then. What do I need to do to be healthy? If I've had a bad experience, what do I do to go forward and be healthy? And so I don't have that happen again. If I've had a bad ghost in my house, maybe I should not get a Ouija board out and ask if it's still there. We need to do the part B, the drama and the excitement of getting the ghost out, like on the shows where they go in and then they come, and at the end they do a cleansing ceremony and they wave the sage around and all that. Well, I'd really like to know what else they told those folks when they rolled out in their vans and left them standing in their empty house. There's what's the rest of the story? You've got to kind of help people get past the event and learn how to go forward, because people also develop relationships with their ghost or their psychic energies in their house, because again, that's what we do. We're human. That's what we do. We try to create a relationship, even if it's unhealthy. We're trying to reach out and connect and understand. Or we have an unhealthy relationship where we're yelling and cussing and fighting and feeling terrible about the whole thing. But even if you hate it, it's a relationship that you may have created with this thing in your house. So relationships have to end, and you have to put a period on it at the end of that sentence and say, I'm done, and I'm moving into something new, and I'm inviting a new good energy in to fill up that maybe empty space in me that used to be amped up and have all this energy, hormones, and adrenaline surging through me when I heard a noise. I heard a door slam on the other side of my house. We get addicted to that too, the excitement of it and the not knowing what's going to happen next. We really get not meaning to, but we do adapt to that. We adapt to our circumstances. And when you've got a bad haunting or what you might think is demonic or an oppressive energy, you get so habituated to it that that's your operating system. And when it's gone, you got to have a little guidance of what to reload in there to take up that space, so that you don't pull it back in, because what the devil can be easier than change or emptiness.
Yeah.
It's so complicated. When
Yeah.
I was a kid growing up, trying to find any ghost book I could find, I thought I really adhered to the squirrel in the attic theory. This shouldn't be here. You can be here or you can be here, but you can't be in the middle. If you've died, you're not supposed to be here, so you need to be saved, and we need to help you, and this is a sad situation and all that, which many times it can be, but it's so much bigger than that. There's so much more to it, and it's more interesting the further into it you go.
Yeah.
I think.
I like the parallels like you're talking about, just for me, that's so deep. Like from a biblical student of like the house, which is the body, which we're talking about spirits inhabiting a body. Well, hold on for 1 second. You are a spirit that's inhabiting a house. You think you own it. You're renting this house for the time being, and you can rent out rooms. You're not the only one here. We're a body that has a spirit and a soul that's like living in this vessel, literally, but also spiritually, and how we look at ghosts living in our house with us and other spirits here that maybe somebody else owned this house before you came, and it meant a lot to them that they didn't want to let go. And it's these little things that talk about just the body or the land, not just the house, but what about the land that there was a war on, or people lived here thousands of years ago even, you know. And again, in the South, all the war that we've had here, or the Native Americans and all of that, and there's just all of this just energy that is just passing through, coming and going, and all of that. And we're, since some of us are more sensitive to it, I would say, but trying to understand it versus cast it out and send it to hell or something like that. Maybe it wants to help. Maybe it knows, you know, other stuff, you know.
And if you don't, if what I'm finding is if you have a haunting where they don't like it, they want it gone, that's fine. But you can shift energy. You don't. Okay, let's say we had a situation where someone had owned a home and they died and they loved the home and they didn't want to leave. And the new residents are in there and they've got a kid and they see the ghost and the kid is frightened, and you never want a child to be frightened or to feel vulnerable in their own home. So maybe we don't have to kick out the ghost. Maybe we can simply change the energy and work with the ghost and say, you can be here, but we don't want to see you. We don't want to hear you. We can happily share space. You have your part. We have our part. Don't scare my kid. And everything's cool. People don't understand their own power and their own ability. As you say, you are a divine soul too. You have just as much say in what happens in your environment as anybody. Just because somebody's dead does not make them magical. They're different, but they're that's it. They're just different. And I love when you go back, when you talk about the Bible and the thing with the pigs and all that. It made me think, we were talking about where did the demons go when you cast them out. And I love if you look at the layer of one layer of reading the Bible is symbology, and you look at the pigs that would have been considered in that culture unclean. They were unclean animals. So Jesus was the greatest storyteller in the world and would always break things down to make it super simple so everybody could grasp it. And putting those demons into the pigs, I wonder if that's symbolic of putting them into something that is unclean, an unclean energy mass.
Yeah.
And then they just hive back into the mass like bees, right? They go back to the hive when you kick them out.
Mm-hmm.
They tractor beam home to their own source of their nasty foulness. And if they go over a cliff, whatever, that's what they do.
Yeah. Yeah, but take the pigs, don't take the person. You know, that's kind of the idea.
Yeah, put it in the pig. But that, you know,
maybe it was looked at that the unclean pigs didn't have spirits or souls. Like they were just an empty vessel that had no emotions. And they looked at not only pigs, but they looked at certain people in the ancient world that way, you know?
Right. And the pigs are, if they're symbolic of something that's unclean, then you're taking an unclean spirit, removing it from a person, and putting it into the bigger pot, communal pot of go back to where you came from with the rest of the pigs, right? When we talk about what do we do with the demon, did they just wander around waiting for the next person to jump on? Maybe, but maybe they also, when they have nowhere to be, when they have no energy frequency to support them to be where they previously were, maybe they just go back to their nasty source.
Yep. Well, it's like you're saying, just clean up the house. You know, don't
you gotta,
don't entertain yourself with the things that you know. Don't pull out the Ouija board. Are you still here? Like, no, don't do it.
Door again. Yeah. So I would always hope that people who feel that they have had someone to help them, a religious figure, a shaman, or whatever they choose to help them get through a negative, difficult, awful time. I always hope that they're not just sent away with, okay, bye, have a happy life. I think there's so much care needs to be given to someone who's been through that, so that you kind of guide them on those first few steps into their new life with some sense of themselves and their own ability to protect themselves and be whole, and keeping your energy up and doing healthy things and having that spiritual connection, however you interpret it, certainly stands you in better stead to get through this life where we do run in and out of all kind of energies, good and bad, all the time.
There's you know, some ancient scriptures, a lot of stuff that was taken out of the versions of the Bible that we have now, at least the Protestants. These different tutorials, if you will, on how an individual can help assist the spirit or soul of their family member or friend that has transitioned, that there's things that you can do to hold space for them, to guide them, to help generate energy. There were tutorials on how to do this that are still in the Catholic Bibles. And it's not just a Catholic thing. Like, these were in the original Bibles. It was in the 1611 King James versions that even the Protestants have. And so, again, tapping into the oversimplifying it, maybe this was a practice that, first of all religions and cultures did something similar, and it was a certain journey that they would do. And then we get into the oversimplifying it to, like, hey, maybe this is causing problems, that maybe they are stuck. Maybe they think you don't care because you buried them and that was it. And there was no proper mourning. There was no proper rejoicing. There was no proper saying their name every morning for 7 days. These type of rituals that, we kind of laugh at in Protestant Christianity, which is, what I'm a part of or a victim of, one or the other. Most of us are, to some degree, but it oversimplifies what's going on and even where the spirits go, even having them around. If they want to stay around, where do we cast them? The idea that I'm looking into all of that stuff, because it was definitely in antiquity about where do you send the demons, where do you send the spirits, and looking into statues and shrines and things that were all within the Bible, but they're in all of antiquity, of gargoyles, and of having a statue of whoever. We have a monument of presidents and pictures and those things, and how they would do rituals to send the spirits to bind to it. So you're always here every time I look at, touch, or pour water on this statue of you, or this locket that I wear around my neck. In ancient Egypt, they say that there is no death. As soon as you remember them, or as soon as you say their name, they're here. And so, hence the idea of casting a stone, where we have their resemblance, that they're always with us, and we have a way for them to communicate with us. And all of that's been lost to, I would say, the Protestant church. I think that the Catholic Church still very much holds on to all of that, even keeping bones of the saints and clothing and all types of relics, holy relics that are blessed on it. So you would have something which would be a cursed object, which is something in the ghost world, right? The haunting world, paranormal. An object that is haunted, where this energy or a demon or a deceased person bound to it. And I've had some Christian ministers come on here and talk about cursed objects and ghosts, and I say, well, for that to exist, a cursed object, then you have to be able to have a blessed object. Oh, no. Wait, what do you know? This is all in the Bible. The saints who walked in high vibrational energy, the things that they touched, they sent it off, handkerchiefs and aprons and statues and all of that carried high vibrational energy. And I think it's a spiritual science that we lost. And can you talk a little bit about cursed objects in modern and antiquity? Any of your thoughts or research on that?
Well, I think that for sure, absolutely everything is alive. And by alive, I mean everything's vibrating at a frequency, right? I mean, nothing's inert, nothing's without some vibrational frequency. Everything's moving, everything's alive. And people love to talk about curses. I think if you get a bad vibe off something, that you should not have it in your house. I've heard of people keeping the craziest things. I worked at a house one time where there was a really weird energy, and I'm like, what is on that shelf? There's something, what? And he said, oh, that's my ex-wife's ashes. I'm like, oh my God, and it was because he didn't know what to do with them. So he just had them hanging around. So it may not have been that the ashes or the urn were giving off a bad energy or a curse, or were haunting him or bringing bad energy into his home. It was simply an unresolved thing. It was unresolved that he had not properly closed the circle on this person's life with a reverent ceremony, perhaps to honor their passing, right? You just put the bag or the box or whatever on the shelf. And I think we get into trouble with the curses and things like that, because we do put more power into those things than we give our own holy divine selves. I don't I don't put I don't put a lot into curses. I put a lot into people believing in curses,
Yeah.
but I don't put a lot. Now you can juju up some stuff. You can if you have the skills and the talent and the experience to pour some bad juju into an object and leave it on the neighbor that you hate, leave it on their porch. Um, it can carry a wallop. It can have an energetic wallop, but it has a shelf life. In my opinion, it has a shelf life. If you curse an object or you pour the bad juju in it or bad gree or whatever, and if that person were to come sit on their porch and kick it into their flower bed and go along about their day and never give it another thought, that to me, the clock is running and the energy is going to run out of that thing. But if a person goes, oh my God, I found this, let me take a picture of it, I'm going to put it on social media and I'm going to have people comment and tell me that that looks like a cursed and that someone's after me and there's bad energy coming, then you're in relationship with it and now you're feeding it and now you're giving it energy. So I do think that said, I do think that land can be um, unfortunate. I think you can have a chunk of land that nobody needs to go live on because it has some sort of um, biological, energetic thing going on that we don't maybe understand, and that piece of land can be have bad juju. It has bad energy. And in that, that's about as close to something being cursed as I personally invest in, as I do think some land can be. I think land can soak it in and uh, be stuck for a long time in some bad energy. But as far as cursed objects and things, do not give an object more power than what you have as a active thinking sentient consciousness.
Yeah, it's almost like it becomes a mediator, it becomes I would say a sleight of hand, if you will, or it can be again being able to convince people that hey, this is what's going to happen when you touch this object, you know, and you're talking about creating the juju and you creating the energy because you literally are creating it as you speak it, and you mentioned consciousness earlier, just talking about like people are raising the energy and experiencing it. So yeah, like you're extracting energy. The people who say, yeah, maybe if I touch it, okay, you're collecting energy that goes to this thing that you've created. And there's a whole realm of that. It's actually called a tulpa, a type of spirit that everyone believes the same thing. And now it's functioning and it has a life of its own, you know?
Oh, that's what when we were talking about these places where they'll go buy an old infirmary or an old institution and open it up for ghost investigators coming there. To me, that's tulpa. That's tulpa energy. Everybody that's in and out of that place every week,
Yeah.
coming with their expectations and their confirmation bias. And I think that they do get paranormal events, but I think a lot
It's
of that's
coming out of
tulpa.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because they believe. And if you get that many people believing and everybody wants to go, you know, to Alcatraz and see the bad cell that had the demon in it.
Yeah.
And everybody who comes tells the story over and over again, and everybody peers into the cell and wants to feel something. Well, we're creating it. We're so much more powerful
Yeah.
than we think. And I don't mean that we're more powerful than the divine, but I mean that we have a lot of power, and a lot of people who get freaked out with ghosts and stuff, they don't realize that they don't necessarily need someone to come in and get rid of the ghost themselves. If there's a lot we can do on our own, pray for them, and ask for divine help, and talk to them, and just be aware that just because someone's dead and invisible does not make them more suddenly magically powerful over you. It's just a situation that's intersecting realities, and often that needs some diplomacy and some rational working out.
Yeah. You know what, people are more sensitive to it, whether they're born that way or they've had an encounter when they were younger. And then you can notice subtle energy. You know, you learn to see things. You learn to pick up, or you learn that there's people who give their life to studying body language, and they can tell when a person's lying. You can look at a field and see subtle things moving. You can gaze into the stars and go out there enough, and you can see objects. Whether now we're getting into a whole nother realm, the fact that you're looking as the observer of consciousness, it wasn't there before, but the fact that you're looking for it, it's a projection of something you wanted to happen so bad that now you're getting physical representations of it. You are seeing subtleties that maybe didn't exist, and that's a whole realm that opens up. But I wanted to share this little story with you. Like when I was a teenager, I got into witchcraft, and I was 14, and, and there was one thing that I got good at doing, trying to do like almost turned it into a party trick. But I would hold a necklace up as a pendulum, and so a lot of people use pendulums and things. But I would do it, and I would try to get demons or spirits to make it spin, and I would hold it as still as I could, and I would start talking to it and things and ask it questions, and it'll kind of subtly move. And I was listening to a lot of dark music, and a lot of the things that I was doing in my life was conducive to demonic demon stuff and satanic Bible, calling on demons. So that creating that energy and me being a channel for it, of other people's thoughts, other people's writings, other movies that were that too, And then here I am trying to have this experience, and I could get it. I would play certain music, Marilyn Manson, a song that would build up, and I would ask it to spin. I say, can the spirits make it spin? And literally I would hold it as still as I could, and it would go, it would start spinning. I'm holding it as still as I can, and it's and then it stops on a dime. And so it was a parlor trick, and then I'm convinced, a party trick, parlor trick, whatever, I'm convinced that, hey, I'm in touch with something. These things are here. And to be honest with you, my life, that doorway, whether it was just through my belief, it about sent me to the mental institution at 15, 16 years old, because I became a portal of something, of a realm that people couldn't see, that was conducive to my energy, which was demonic, lower energy. I look back at that today, as I did, would say, well, yeah, the demons made it. I used to be able to talk to demons, and demons can do it. But just talking about the consciousness thing that we're speaking on, that what if, as I'm looking at it, I'm picturing it, I'm wanting it to go in a circle, I'm asking, but I'm like almost trying to control it with my mind. I'm seeing it happen, and then as it starts to move and I'm like connecting with it, what if it wasn't a demon at all? What if it was the fact that I was wanting it to spin, and it did? And so there's the eye of the beholder, the experiencer. But because you're saying we're way more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. It'd be so easy to use a demon as a scapegoat, or the devil told me to do it, versus no, you did it. You went forth and did that, versus taking responsibility as a creator or as a destroyer.
Well, we've been told that we don't have any power. In traditional religion and Protestantism and all that, you had a mediator, you had a higher authority you had to go to through a priest or through your pastor, and they had the hotline to God. You didn't. And even particularly before the Bible was able to be printed and distributed, they were the gatekeepers, right? And that gatekeeping tradition still kind of has continued, especially as our lives have gotten easier, because our lives are much easier now than they were, even 100 years ago, right? And we've kind of entered into a fast food culture where we want everything when we want it, and we want it very simple, and we want it the same way every time. If I'm going to McDonald's, I want my McDonald's to taste the same, whether I'm in Tallahassee or Birmingham or Nashville. I want to get that. I want to count on that being delicious and eating it. So we've done a lot of that, I think, unfortunately, to our religion and our faith practices and our sense of the world. We've really allowed ourselves to kind of enjoy having everything broken down into its easiest explanation, and we enjoy not asking questions. So when we have things told to us, well, this is how it is, and any ghost, there's no such thing as ghosts. They're all demons masquerading. There's no such ability to make a pendulum swing or to work a Ouija board or whatever, dowsing rods. It's all bad. You certainly don't have the power to do that. So we've been disempowered because it was expedient and efficient way to practice some faith traditions, wait for your instructions and then live according to this rule book, order off this menu, and you'll have a good meal. You'll have a good life. You'll go to heaven, right? So now we're really challenged in the most fantastic way as consciousness raises to be able to really look at things and say, okay, if I got my energy, if I got my vibe high enough, if I'm listening to music, which is vibration and frequency, that is at a specific frequency that raises that up and pulls that energy up out of me, why can't I do psychonetically make that pendulum swing? Why can't I do that? Sure, I can. And I am not at all dismissing the experiences that people have. I'm just saying there may be more explanations for our experiences that we simply have not learned yet, that will, as we learn them, as we go forward, which we're meant to do, even if we have to go through bad experiences or difficult experiences or times when we weren't good to ourselves or we got in trouble or we really screwed up and we needed to fix it. We needed to work our way back out of it. We come out of that with a greater expanded learning and knowing. And because someone's been through difficult or negative experiences, they might be called, negative, and you fooled around the Satanic Bible and people would, clutch their pearls and scream. Well, you expanded your knowledge base. So now you can say my contrast between what I know to be really negative and not a good way to care for myself can contrast so dramatically to the high that I feel when I'm really connected, when I'm really in a good place. I can truly see that where I want to be because I've been where I didn't want to be.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think there's a lot, even when we talk about frequency and stuff. You mentioned Egypt, and on the cave walls with the tomb walls with the hieroglyphics, I understood once that they always put in hieroglyphic line that said, because the hieroglyphics were meant to be read aloud when you visited the tomb to venerate and do ceremony and all that, you were to read the hieroglyphics aloud. And it says in hieroglyphics, alive in the mouth of any who speaks.
There you go.
And that's the power of the vibration and moving those sound waves, that frequency, that energy, moving it around. We have so much power. We don't, we have the power to make somebody's day.
Yeah.
You have the power to be in a checkout line and have the person in front of you just be awful to the teller. And you have the power. You don't need special magical superpowers or anything. You have the power to just look at that checker and say, hi, I'm really sorry that happened. I hope your day's going to get better. Just a kind word. And we forget how powerful we are in the most simple ways. And we feel when we have a bad haunting, it may not even be bad. It may just be scary to us because we feel like we're not in control of it. So this whole time in our lives right now as a culture, I would love to think that maybe we're going through so much overwhelm and so much taking in so much information and all of the chaotic part of it. I hope that we're doing that because it's allowing us to refine our discernment when we are deluged with stuff and deluged with opinion and deluged with what's presented to us as, here's your history. I think a lot of history has been greatly edited and crafted. Here's a version of events. We're getting all this stuff fed to us. I really hope that it's helping us move out of that fast food kind of cultural mindset and into an expanded consciousness where we are more tolerant of experience, understanding that it teaches us stuff, and understanding that everything that comes to us is a lesson, and it is to grow and expand us and to help us become even bigger as souls, as part of the great divine soul.
Yeah, and
I know, I'm sorry. I always worry when I go to talk. People are like, oh my God, can you just tell us a ghost story? Please shut up and just tell us a ghost story. We're not interested in your theories. So I apologize.
No. It's hey, I get it both, but it's what we do. It's this is a vehicle for a much deeper truth. You know what I'm saying? For people who are wanting a ghost story, it's without question that something exists beyond the five senses. It's beyond question. So if you want, I've got tons of videos of, I wouldn't say ghosts. People may call them ghosts. They're spirit beings, whether they're elements, whether they're angels, you can see through them. I mean, so, but even that footage, which is, I got some very compelling footage, and not even just me, but the stuff that's out there. Read the comments. People are skeptics. There's no amount of footage or anything, story that you can tell them that's going to make them believe. The people already believe. You know, they've had an experience, and maybe they're chasing that experience. Part of that was me, you know, having an encounter when I was a child.
Right. What I really loved when I was doing the interviews and things for the books, when I was working on those actively, if I went to interview a family and the husband, and I'm not trying to be exclusive and say, you know, conform to old normatives, but usually the men at that time were not likely to believe in this stuff. They just weren't open to it. 20 years ago, the kids, the wife, the ladies in the house, they were more tuned in and more open. But if I could go interview and the husband came and sat down at the table to talk to me, I was like, oh yeah, because it really,
You saw a shift.
once you converted, once the man of the house had something happen to him, it was like, okay, yes, this is true. This is happening. I mean, personal experience, and you are on board.
Well, maybe that's why they called it Old Wives' Tale.
Right. Yeah. Right. I think that's you can go and be an investigator and go to a haunted places and get data on your meters and stuff, but it won't mean anything until the first time you see something that shouldn't be there in the way we interpret reality, or you get touched, or you have stuff moving, or you are really seeing it and experiencing it for yourself. And then you're all in. I mean, nothing can substitute for personal experience. Nothing.
Yeah, it's so right. And people are having that, and many people have had it. You know, you're talking about 20 years ago, but they've just been too scared to talk about it. But I mean, what better time than now? Obviously, when people are faced with death and scary situations and what's happening, there's a rise in all of this for a reason. And I've my sister told somebody one of my stories years ago, one of her boyfriends, and it was about a shadow being that I saw, that kind of thing. And it was a grown man. He started breaking down crying because he had the experience but thought he was crazy, you know, and didn't tell anyone. And they were just talking about, you know, weird stuff late one night, and she said, yeah, my brother had this happen, and the guy started crying because he thought he was the only one. So yeah, this stuff is very powerful, to own your truth and to not be an expert, say, oh, it's a demon. There is that realm, but it's like, hold on, maybe it's deeper than that, and everything is deeper than we think it is.
Oh, it absolutely is, and you were so right about that. If it gives people the ability to say, I guess I'm not crazy, this has happened to someone else, that's huge for a person. I mean, to be going around thinking you're crazy, and then to have someone share, no, that happened to me too. That can change a person's life, like you say. And when I wrote my books, I did not write them from a viewpoint of, I'm going to convince people that they're ghosts and that this really happened. I just wanted to go to the people that had experienced it and let them tell their experience in their own words and give some context, describe what was going on, some history, some setting, and then leave it to the people who read my books to decide what they think about that. Do they can make up their own minds, but it's so powerful to hear someone describe it themselves and give you their version of it through their personal filters and experience. That's my favorite kind of ghost book, those personal accounts. Let the people who had it happen to them, let them tell their stories, because it helps heal them. It helps heal other people. And it helps you express things that maybe you didn't know who to talk to about it.
Let me ask you about this. You're talking about these ghosts and just spirits and things being able to move objects or move or sit or change the frequency of the room, these little things. And it seems like they have the ability to do stuff at particular times. What is the idea that they only have so much energy that can get our attention? Maybe they've tried to get our attention in subtle ways, but we don't pay attention. But it's not until something moves off the table, or we hear a knock, or we get chills and feel like something passed through us, and it's little things like that they have the energy to do. It with all your investigation and hearing everybody's stories, the idea about that they're limited daily, monthly, yearly, of how much energy they can use. Like, it took everything to muster an apparition or to cause the wind to blow. And now, because I find the fact that if maybe that's how they got your attention, if they don't have to get your attention that way tomorrow, there's the conversation goes deeper than you just trying to see something, that they can maybe show you something else or communicate telepathically or give you feel a feeling. And I feel like all of it costs energy, and they don't have unlimited energy to tap into our realm. Can you talk about that energy a little bit?
My best guess, and what I think about that, and certainly there are other theories. I think we have two things going on. One, I think we have different types of what we call ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
We do have say the residual haunting that's on a tape loop that is just impressed into the energy of the place and just kicks on and plays and does the same thing. It doesn't have a lot of ability to interact. It's just going to go till the battery winds down. Or we have those spirits that I think are left here. They're fragments. They're broken off little fragments, the energetic personality fragments. I don't think they have a whole lot of ability to do anything because they're not generating any of their own energy. They're running off battery. Maybe they can get juiced up a little bit when they're around humans and get enough juice, work up enough to push something off a table or to knock a picture askew. And then you get spirits. It's a whole nother thing when you get spirits who are totally conscious and aware of their existence as a non-physical being. And I think the ones that are just like in physical life, you're going to have spirits that are not so great, and then you're going to have spirits who are terrific. And I think they have a range of what they can do. So their ability to do something and then recharge from it may be much greater on the farther up you get on the scale of your consciousness of being a spirit and not being a person or a physical remnant anymore.
Yeah.
I do think there are places like in a haunted hotel where there's so much energy coming in and out, constantly changing energy, that it's like the tuning fork thing, where you whack a tuning fork and then a tuning fork again across the room will start vibrating.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't move it, you just hold it. You got two people with the forks and one bangs it and the other waits, and then there starts going. So I think that's kind of a way to think of these residual or stuck personality ghosts. They're like a tuning fork, and they may be just standing there waiting, and then someone who comes in who's really vibing high, that they may be able to pick up some of that vibe and do some things. But the second thing is, I'm just wondering how much of this we see and notice it because we have a moment of receptivity, that the factors all come together just right for us to see it. Like you were talking about with the quantum physics thing, where the scientists have decided with quantum physics that an object reacts in a certain way when everybody's watching it.
Yeah.
But when you're not looking at it, it may do something completely different, right? So maybe when we have these intersecting energies and vibrations and frequencies that come together just right, maybe it's a perfect little energy burst that allows a ghost to knock something off the table, because at that moment we're tuned in, we're vibing, we're connected, and we kind of work together to make something happen. And is that an unconscious communication to try to connect and help each other? Because maybe the energy that made that happen, then the non-physical personality remnant that knocked the ashtray off the table wants your attention to help them, or notice, oh my God, just notice me, just notice that I'm here. And maybe you at some point in your big life story need to have a paranormal experience so that it will open the door for you to explore some things that maybe you never would have looked at. So do the factors all kind of come together harmoniously and synchronously to make things happen in a way that's, beyond bigger than what my puny little mind can understand.
It makes so much sense.
What I mean?
Oh, for sure. It makes so much sense. I've been kind of studying and pondering both sides of it, right? Of what we'll consider demons or angels, righteous or wicked, and energy comes into play. Energy comes into play as far as a person or an entity, which a person is an entity, right? A persona, that can generate its own energy. that you can generate your own energy or receive energy from something greater, i.e., the sun, and many other things. Food we get, and so now you got a high vibe person or a person that is in darkness, and it doesn't seem that darkness is a place where energy is created, because it seems like light in life is energy, and it's that spark, and it seems that certain um, entities, or not just entities, because this is vice versa. This, I think, is the way that we're going to be able to understand it, is certain fish that dwell deeper at the bottom of the riverbanks. They eat they eat the light that the other fish release, that comes from the food source. And so you have bottom feeders and those things. Well, it's still a condensed, broken down form of the remains of some type of life energy. And so this is happening there. And the idea of angels and demons and humans in between, if you will, because when you read these accounts in the Bible or any sacred text, or you've had an encounter, there does bring some type of vibrational frequency with it, where it's like buzzing and it's stronger than you. Like it's a greater, higher, you want to cry, it moves you to tears. I mean, people experience this at church when the songs come on and they can muster up that energy, when the next person's sitting there blank face. It's just, it resonated with you like that tuning fork, right? So the conversation, I think, consciousness and energy, light and dark, because people are having some type of demonic encounters, and that's the reason this is making sense. Or for them, just a blanket statement as all ghosts or demons, is there's something that needs to borrow energy, or it needs to work off of you, because you exist in this realm and have a greater energy than what they were left with. And you're talking about not all of these ghosts, not all of these spirits are created the same or are the same on the other side. You know, people, the contrast of the beautiful angelic being that people see and they're just moved to tears, and you feel vibrationally, you get chills and your hair stands on end. People report waking up with shadow entities in their rooms and houses, and almost sucking or leeching their energy and their breath out of them. A lesser form of, they can't go directly to the sunlight, but they can leech off of someone in small increments and get that little bit of light out of you. So when you're talking about all of the stuff coming together in energy and vibrational frequencies of, you know, it's not just us. It's not just angels or demons, but the contrast in between all of the realms, and we're in this relationship together to some degree.
Right. Look at the physical world. You might look at the physical world as a reflection of the spiritual world. Look at your spirit, look at your physical world. We have people who are astonishingly good, and we have people who are brilliant, and we have people who do great things, and we have people who are unsung heroes who are out there quietly working to bring the best they can every day and help people. But then we see the other side of the spectrum. We see horrible, unfathomable evil, people doing things that we just cannot, in your wildest nightmares, you would never know how someone could even do that. So we have this huge spectrum in our earthly life. So I think that in the non-physical world, there is a similar reflection where we have all sorts of frequency bands, like on the radio, right, that you can pick up. We have all sorts of frequency bands, and some of them are pretty low. And then the higher you get on the spectrum, you know, the more uplifted and great that you feel as you dial it in. But it's just, what are you going to dial in on your personal receiver? Where are you going to turn that dial? And you always have the choice. You know, am I going to listen to you know, dark, heavy stuff? Because I feel I don't know how to express my sense of maybe some anger or some disempowerment. So I'm going to listen to this similarly upset, angry stuff that helps me not feel alone. Or am I going to turn that dial to the kind of uplifting music that makes me feel fabulous? You know, either my favorite songs or gospel or beautiful orchestral music or great guitar or what, you know. We have that choice all the time. And we're so vulnerable, and we feel so much when we're human. We feel all the things. So we're always kind of running ourselves up and down that dial. No one should ever, ever be, I don't mean to ever condemn anyone who may find themselves in a lower frequency right now because they are having a hard time, or they're having trauma, or they're very vulnerable and just feel like they're in a hole. Please, I'm never criticizing anybody for where they fall on the vibrational scale,
Yeah.
because we're all running up and down it all the time,
Yeah.
because we're just human and we feel so much, and we're always trying so much to make our lives make sense.
Yeah.
So some people, their experience, to make their life make sense, their experience may have to take them to some darker places.
Mm-hmm.
And you may not like that, and you may not cheerlead for it, but you have to respect it as part of their journey
Yeah.
to a greater understanding.
Yeah, I'm thankful for the contrast, like you said. It's huge to me, but it's even huger that I made it out. Like, you know, the stuff I was into, and not everybody does. So there's a compassion, you know,
Right.
to reach out to those people and to try to infiltrate. Like, hey, we're doing a ghost podcast. No, you're hearing about how to not become a ghost. You're hearing about
Right.
how to
Offer.
how to attract demons to you. The demon's not the problem. That's a
Right.
consequence. The problem is, why is it attracted to you if it's negative, right?
Why were you vulnerable to that? So without criticizing or condemning, let's just look at the reality of where you find yourself right now. Why are you kind of vulnerable to it? There's meaning behind everything that we go through, everything. And we can't just dismiss it and say, oh, well, because you're a slacker and a loser. Come on. You
Yeah.
know, so, and I find that with ghosts, so often people who have ghosts in their homes, especially if you're mediumistic and you can pick stuff up, to say, does this remind you of some situation elsewhere in your life? Is this similar to something you felt before? You can really pull some things together through the vehicle of a person experiencing a haunting that helps with their healing just as much as a ghost. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Everything's so connected. It's so connected.
Yeah. Just the energy that comes from it, the energy you can generate, and if it's not in you to give a good word to somebody, and that's somebody taken, like and you don't even know it. They call it psychic vampires. Like, everywhere you go, you're just here to take energy. You live off of the life force of others because you haven't learned how to generate your own, or an entity hasn't, whatever. But we rub shoulders with those people every day, and we may be one of those people to somebody else and not even know it. To make sure that, like, are we leaving a trail, a wake of, heartache, or are we lifting everybody's countenance up? And for me, that's the why Jesus, stands out to me so much. I feel like he did that everywhere he went, and the people who couldn't generate, where they had been taken advantage of by others, he not only didn't just prayed for them, but he taught them how to do it themselves. I mean, versus even blaming the entity or hoping an angel comes, kind of thing. There was a story in the scriptures where it's repeated several times, but it was a man in a well. Well, he was in a pool, and he was sitting at the pool, and all of these paraplegic people, paralyzed people with ailments was there, and an angel would come by and stir the water, and the water would spin and swirl, and whoever got in the water was like miraculously healed. But there's only one person, and everybody's fighting to get in, and so everybody's waiting on this move of the angelic, or this move of God, when the timing is right. And Jesus comes and sees that, it's not that person's fault. This is what they believe. So the fact that they're putting their belief, their expectancy in that water, something's happening. People are getting touched. It's legit. But Jesus is like, hold on. I can generate my own energy and also teach you how to do it yourself. And you don't have to wait on the angel. Now you're a walking angel, where everywhere you go, you're one who gives, because you're not giving because you're depleted. We've been there too. But giving because you're tapped into the life force, the beauty, the grace, the peace, where I've got much to give. I can give you this and not be depleted. And so he stands the guy up and lays his hands on him, and the man gets healed. And it's like, okay, this is what you were looking for. Now go and do the same, because that person's life is impacted. And who's to say why they were there? It's the demon talk is there, or something was draining their energy, or even the elders who were like, whether they had to pay to be there, they had to pay to go into the temple. They had all kinds of wild stuff and the people paid so much they had nothing left to give, and they just had to wait, and hopefully they were chosen. But he's like, hey, this is how powerful you are. Mm-hmm. What I can do, he says, greater things you can do. So when we talk about generating energy, and the spinning motion is there because he talks about the water would begin to stir. The water would generate energy, and whoever got in it got healed. It's like, hold on, I'm a wellspring of life, and if you believe in me, you're connected, and these things you'll do too. So the conversation, I think, is energy.
Right, and all of his teaching and his life modeling, removing the intermediary between you and the divine creator. That was what he was all about. You don't just talk. Just if you want to talk to God, just talk to God.
Yeah.
You can be, as close as I am. You are too. He was working so hard to remove the filters and the intermediaries in between a person and their divine connection.
Yep.
And that's a lesson I think that we forget a lot. We forget. We think we can't have that connection to the divine, however we interpret that. But that's another way that everybody's connected too. You can have people who say, well, I had a person in my church and they got sick and everybody prayed for them and they healed. But when I got sick, everybody prayed for me and I didn't heal.
Exactly.
Well, what that means is, more likely what it means is not that you weren't cared for or loved or supported, but it means that you were in a different place in your personal narrative than the person who was able to get healed. Doesn't mean you were denied it. You just weren't there yet. You weren't in the right place. You have more things that you need to understand about your situation, perhaps, before you can, or you have, like you say, you have some blocks in what you're receptive to, and you're not there yet, and you can't allow it, So I find that a lot, even, and with hauntings and stuff, people will live in the same family and say, you'll have somebody who says, I never saw anything. Nothing ever happened to me. I saw nothing. So we're always sending and receiving, right? Our energy. We're always sending energy and receiving energy, and sometimes stumbling and maybe taking energy where we shouldn't. So everybody's at a different place. So everybody gets the experience that is suited to where they are in their personal journey and where they're going and what their personal vibration and frequency is.
Yeah. I like the way you explain that with each person. I think that's what Earth is, all of these different dimensions that are existing at the same time, cohesively on top of each other. And sometimes they bleed over into others. Sometimes you get to see. Sometimes if you send a camera to the bottom of the ocean, you'll see some strange creatures that generate their own light and look scary, but they're really harmless. There's so much that separates with these veils, but it's all taking place together, and even our belief systems of what is truth, of what is the television. But it seems like who has the louder voice, who has the platform, and it's been, to be honest, it has been corrupt religious leaders who have been gatekeepers. As long as you continue to come, as long as you continue to pay or come to us, versus, like you said, Jesus representing liberation. Hey, you can go for yourself. Actually, God's been waiting for you to show up and just say hello,
Right. And it just depends on who you are. Maybe you're a person who really needs that structure.
Yeah.
And you need a religious figure or authority to guide you through it till you can get to the place where you can get off, move away from that and feel it yourself. Maybe a lot of people never will. A lot of people love that and it works for them, and that's what's right for them. We forget. I think the thing that really drives me crazy in traditional religion is that we've been told that you have this one life and that's it. And I don't personally believe that. I think life goes on and on infinitely. Our experiences go on, and our souls never die. We just move to the next thing, and the next thing to learn and expand and understand, and to take advantage of being, when you're non-physical, being able to move between all those realms of energy and realities and consciousness within the mind of the divine. Uh, I think we were done a disservice when we were not allowed that in the early formation of the standard religions that most people have nowadays. But seems like that's really opening up, and ghost and paranormal and all that, as crazy as it can be,
Yeah.
and as the wild west of days of paranormal research and all that, it really has a function. I think it's really opening people up.
Yeah, it's funny you say that too, because I remember some of the Christian circles that I was, in, because those are dimensions too, right? Different, like
Right.
every Christian denomination, every church that are next to each other believe a total different interpretation of the Bible. So, and it's so weird that we're just blanket statement, all Christians or all of Christianity, when there's
Right.
none of them almost that agree once they get their hands on the text, kind of thing. Um, but it shows you what's inside of them. I like that. The fact that, like, what is inside of you, when you read that, it comes out the way you frame it. But I've heard people say, like, they don't like to call the Holy Spirit the Holy Ghost, because I think early King James would say the Holy Ghost, and sometimes, and they would say, we're not using that. That's a mistranslation. A ghost is a disembodied spirit. But no, it's just telling you it is the spirit of a collective or of somebody who existed that is still here, that wants to help, and that now that it's been taken to the next level bodily. Now when the person gives up the ghost, is what these people did who carried so-called the anointing, or something beautiful. They gave up the ghost, and now that was available for all the people to experience. So that whole ghost notion is still in the very foundations of Christianity, of the Holy Ghost. And some of them were so combative against it, they don't even want to use that term Holy Ghost. They'd rather say Holy Spirit or something like that.
Right. And life goes on and on and on and on and on. Life never ends. And when we stop thinking about life as being a limited experience, then maybe we have more tolerance and compassion for, let's say, if you say, I don't know, Gettysburg, and someone would say, oh, it's so sad that those soldiers are eternally playing out these battles, these horrible battles, or any other great, terrible tragedy where you have a lot of paranormal activity, a lot of energy still held there. Well, okay, but maybe that's just from our point of view. Maybe they're working out what they need to work out. Um, Maybe we need to just let them do their thing. Maybe we don't need to, converge with sage and holy water and try to release them, or release these. Maybe we need to respect that they are having an experience, and they will work it out, and they have all the time in eternity to do it. And we need to be a little bit more respectful of ghostly situations that we ourselves would not want for ourselves, but we need to be a little more respectful that they are some form of energy and spirit, and they're going through something. And the best thing for us to do is not make it worse. If they don't want help, let's try to not make it worse.
Yeah, it's a piece of them that's there. Like, have you heard about, like, double hauntings? Like, the same ghost or the same person that is showing up at the house, but he's also haunting the old job site. Like, just because the
Right.
idea of these soldiers, like, what if that was their life? Like, what if they didn't get drafted? They signed up, and this is what they ate, slept, and breathed. It was who they were. It was their persona, their personality, and it's their connection, their tether to still be present on the earth. Maybe the only one that they have, but there's a chance that could be what they want to do, is to, in their minds, guard and defend their land from attackers or something, and they're still kind of playing that out, if you will. Like, what is the possibility that's happening in just the imprint, when they also could be somewhere else? Have you heard of any? I know it's kind of like two questions together, but something to
Well,
look
no,
into.
I thought I have run into situations where, for example, a house that I write about in the books, the D.A.R. Richards house, where they feel like the spirit of Mrs. Richards is there, and and they hear the children with her, and they hear her interacting with the children. All at one point, it was very frequent. So they said, well, why would the children be there? Of course, Mrs. Richards died very young and left this whole gaggle of children and a tiny baby. And it was, you certainly could understand her trauma, why a piece of her would be stuck there. But why the children? Because the children lived and grew up and were happy and you didn't have kids dying in the house or anything. They all lived to be adults. Why would they be there as ghost children? Well, maybe they're a residual haunting and she's a stuck haunting. Maybe they're just residual and she's perceiving them on a different plane. Why would you also sometimes have a ghost where the ghost changes age? Why would you sometimes see the ghost as a kid and then see the ghost as an adult or at the time of their death? There's so many layers to this that I really can't explain how all of it works. I can't explain even a particle of how it works. I can just report back of what my experiences have been and what I think might be going on in some cases. But I just think it all comes back to the fact that people have free will. Every soul, even in energy form, has some type of free will, and they get to choose what they do. And when I've had ghosts before who will not leave or don't want to leave, you can't make them. You have to let them do their thing. You have to let them have their experience. But there are ways, again, to shift energy so that they're not bothersome. But it's so much more complex than when I was a kid indulging my appetite for anything ghostly, and I thought it was so simple and squirrel in the attic, and it's not. If I
Yeah.
can't give you proper answers to any of these questions, I can at least tell you it's because the subject has grown and expanded so much in my thinking and my experiences that it's so above my pay grade. I can't even begin to explain all this stuff.
I think it just goes to show like how much we've kind of covered in this conversation, just showing you that they all the realms bleed together. It is not just one thing cut and dry. No, now we're getting into Egypt, getting into statues, we're getting into landmass, we're getting into memories, and it's probably all of those things at the same time. And that's every subject though. Like that's because we're all connected. That we share a symbiotic relationship with all life. If there's any life there or there was life there, we share a connection with it somehow. The plants, the trees, we share a symbiotic relationship with it. The sun, all of these things are honored by specific cultures, and honored just to say, hey, thank you, and I see you, and I see the relationship we share. Without the tree releases oxygen that we need to breathe, and we release carbon that it needs to breathe, and that we're here for each other. And if one of us leaves, the other one leaves with it. If and in the sun, these ideas of the sun, and if the sun doesn't exist or decides not to wake up one morning, we're not here. And so these ancient cultures and Native Americans and Egyptians who were in connection with all energy, and they recognized the energy and they gave it a name and a persona, and it greeted them, and they gave offerings to it, and they didn't just take. They didn't just take from it. Take. They said, what can I do to return the favor? And some, nothing. Just be you, and you're returning the favor. Just remember me, say my name, all of this kind of stuff. Nature is huge, and you're talking about like the nature, I don't know if you said nature spirits, but the elements or the earthbound spirits, if you will. And you mentioned that. And a lot of my research now, and it's getting into the Bible, but the names are hidden. Is the goddesses, if you will, the goddesses from antiquity, from all cultures, from Egypt, every one but us, right? They had honored the goddess, everyone but the Christian, but the Hebrews, but they did at one point. They believed in that these gods. You can't have a father and a son without a mother. It doesn't work that way. But something happened and those names were hidden. There was a divorce that somebody hid them. and I'm finding that the names of those goddesses are in the Bible, and they weren't demons. Let's say that. And but all of the other stories and text in Greek and Egypt and all of that talk about how the mother is Gaia, is Earth, is Eve, if you will, and how when they passed or they went on to their next incarnation, that they went back to the earth, and that the spirits of the mother communicates with us through the plant life and through what we'll call the elemental kingdom and earth, air, fire, water, and spirit, that there is an essence that is still communicating with us from that realm, that has a personality, that has thoughts, that has memory. Water holds memory, fire, smoke, all of this. So getting into that, it's how they can be remembered. Maybe they were here physically in a form, maybe not. Maybe it was always a personification of nature. But the moment you say its name and you honor it, it honors you, it seems. And are you getting into a little bit of that just with nature in that way of like, hey, we're going to hang out in the groves or in the gardens or in the forest or something like that?
Well, I'm a pagan. I grew up in the Protestant church, but my heart was called specifically to that, because where is the divine feminine? Where is she?
Yeah.
And so my spirituality has moved into that. So I know exactly what you're talking about. It was interesting that culturally, when we lost our goddesses and the sense of a divine feminine energy, meaning a nurturing, creative energy, as opposed to a masculine energy, which is the active, outgoing energy, the navigator who navigates and who steers, right? You got to have the balance. You have to have the receptive, quiet to go with the active, engaged, physical, the inner life and the outer life, right? Feminine, masculine, and everybody needs it. We moved culturally into thousands of years of masculine dominated energy because we had to get so much stuff done. We had to have women continually resupplying the culture with babies, and the men going out and doing all of the experiences of war and discovery and all the super active energy. So it kind of became a bit dominated by masculine energy, and we lost our goddesses. So it would be nice if people are shifting, and through the paranormal, being interested in paranormal, you're shifting out of a purely physical masculine manifestation energy into an inner imaginative, intuitive thinking, non-physical energy. So even that is kind of pulling that feminine energy back into our culture so we can balance it, not to take over or to have one be over the other, but to have them come in and balance so that we're at a really good place with having both of those types of energies, because they complement each other. We see that all throughout the natural world. You've got your masculine, feminine energies that complement, and in their highest expression, they complement each other. So hopefully we're moving in toward that kind of thing, and getting some divine feminine back in there to balance all that masculine doing energy.
Yeah, I think we are. And I think I think she's ready. I think we need her. We need her.
Been here.
If we look at what's going on in the world, it's obvious people are crying out because they're a product of a broken home. That we need the father and the mother.
Yes, both. We need them both.
Yeah.
Both. Right.
So just one or two more questions here at the end. Blakely State Park, and we do retreats there. It's usually where we go for retreats, and that's where the battlefield is, and beautiful land, beautiful forest, and it has that nostalgia or that memory, or maybe the energy there of like, hey, some dark things took place. I mean, there's monuments of certain trees that the hanging tree is there, and so there's a battlefield, and there's reenactments where people reenact what the spirits did in times past and those things, right? So we do spiritual retreats there, and we go to be honest with you, Chastain Field, and we've been encountering some some kind of nature spirits, little lights that are coming out of the forest that at first glance I would say maybe fireflies, but they're not. They look different, they blink different, they come closer, other ones light up and come down. This is after me going out there with people to do spiritual work and focusing on the sky, because that was kind of like my introduction to lights, if you will. And like, they're gonna come eventually, kind of look up, and the angels are out there, they're gonna say hello, just ask them. And everybody starts seeing them in the woods. And this is, well, I've been going out there for a couple of years now, taking groups, and it was kind of a slap in the face for me, because they're like, hey, what's that light? I said, no, they're gonna they're gonna be up there. No, hey, that light's getting my attention in the woods, flying all through the woods. What is that? Oh, no.
Right.
And so everybody's like having this experience, but I'm like, no, they're gonna. And it was like 2 or 3 times until I was like, hey, yeah, I mean, months apart to where, these lights are coming. And I was like, hold on, let me just say, maybe it is that light that had to get small and come down or whatever, but to step into the thing that's like, hey, is this, I'm sorry for looking up there and looking out here, but to have like encounter. And this is what we've done and do at Blakely, but have you heard any stories, or have you yourself had any experiences at Blakely Park?
Blakely's crazy haunted because I think that it is so left alone. Blakely's pretty much what you see is what you get. You could have shown up there 200 years ago, and except for the places where there's maintenance done to keep a field cleared, or the trails and things like that, it's exactly as it was. No one's really messed with it. So I think it's really in a pure state. It still maybe kind of has its original vibrational blueprint. Things have been layered onto it, of course, since then. But Blakely's crazy. Most of the people who have had experiences at Blakely say, I will never go to Blakely again, or I will never spend the night in Blakely again. I've had people who have no interest in ghosts whatsoever, men who've gone out there camping with scout troops and things like that, groups and everything. They will say, there was one guy, he said he was so spooked by the time that he got time for bedtime and camped out overnight in Blakely, by the noises, the things he was seeing out of the corner of his eyes. I think the story was that he ended up like sitting up against a tree because he didn't want to go to sleep. He was so freaked out. And he felt hands come down on his shoulders, like, and shake him, like, what are you doing? Wake up. What are you doing? People have seen things. People have heard things. People have been touched. I know I heard a story that someone I knew had been out on the river, and they had run out of gas, and they pulled up into where they could dock and get up into Blakely, and they're walking the trails to try to get to civilization, to the guardhouses and stuff. And at that time, there were people, rangers on the property, or guards or whatever, would ride around and keep an eye on things where they were at that time. So pretty soon a truck came from one of the workers at Blakely and picked him up. This is at night. They explained the situation. He said, great, got your gas can, let's go, we'll get you some gas and get you out of here. But they asked him, do you have any good stories? And he said, oh, I can't even tell you. He said, we don't have time for me to tell you the things I see driving around out here. And that's consistently what I hear over and over again, even from people who don't do ghosts. If they have gone out to Blakely and spent the night, or had to go with their kids' camping group or a church group or something, they say like, no, I'll never go back. I will never go back. Because it is so actively, energetically supporting many, many different realms and realities. And like you say, like all at one time, everything kind of converges there. The environment just supports it. So we've gotten crazy things on film in broad daylight. It is really charged. It's really amped up.
Wow. So crazy. Yeah, Blakely's a big one. People having experiences there, but also going with the signs, and it's like almost like building the expectation, though, of like, hey, you're going on the haunted land, or they don't say that, but you're like, hey, this is, a lot of people died here, kind of, but it plants that seed too, that that something is here, or you can see something, or this land is haunted, be careful, kind of thing. It is not a secret,
Yeah.
because I think the ground we're standing on now as well, could very well be the same energy existed here, or the same wars fought. It just doesn't have that monument.
Yeah, if you're going to go to Blakely, which is if you like to go outdoors and you like to camp and do all that, Blakely would be a great place if you were looking to experience something. But go in with, like you say, you can't go in there with expectations. You got to go in with no expectations. If something happens, if you experience something that is amazing and cool and you're lucky, but be open to whatever form that might come in. People may be waiting for something to come down out of the sky and ignore all the amazing flashing unexplained lights circling around the trees and the bushes.
Yeah.
So just be, as with everything, your exploration of the non-physical paranormal world, be as open and as calm and level as you can, as you would be working around your normal everyday life.
Yep.
You don't walk into your local grocery store thinking, oh, something terrible is going to happen, there's going to be an earthquake. Oh, come on.
Yeah.
So don't do that when you go into the paranormal. Just, I'm here, I'm open. If something happens, cool.
Yeah, so good. Elizabeth, what got you into this? Was there an experience that you had early on that kind of lit a spark in you? What made you ask these deeper questions?
I was just born this way. I was born, I don't remember not ever experiencing the world as being multi-layered and understanding that other things were going on and seeing things and experiencing things and believing in ghosts before I even knew what a ghost was. Just grew up as a psychic child and trying to explain my experiences and being drawn to this kind of energy because if you're sensitive or psychic or medium, you want to live in that world. That's where you're comfortable. That's your operating system, in that kind of energy. Living in the normal everyday life world is kind of tough when you're sensitive. So you're drawn always to learn and read and try to learn and try to make context for the non-physical world so that it balances out all the stuff you deal with in your physical world. So I was always interested in ghosts. So I always was seeing things and having experiences and the psychic stuff and all that. I tried to not have it happen. I try to be a normal person. I just wanted to be normal and accepted and not feel like a weirdo. But especially when my own children were small, I didn't want to be the weird mom. But at some point, you just have to be who you are. And if you're open and sensitive and you can see ghosts and talk to them, and you're in that kind of world. If that's who you are, you have to go with it. You have to be who you are. And if people don't get it, that's fine. That's fine. But it was a great relief when I stopped trying to be normal. Yeah, so
Yep. And it
my life.
usually
This is my
is.
whole world.
Yeah, you just embrace it, embrace what you're called to do, and because the thing, see, that's what makes you weird, is the fact that you're trying to hide it, and people know you're trying to hide it. That's not really you. You're pretending.
Right.
We know you are. We don't know the real you, but you're pretending, and to think that, oh, I'm just blending in. No, you're not. You weren't
Right,
born
right.
to blend in. You were born to stand out and to bring something beautiful to this earth. And I think that when we say yes to that calling, no matter how weird it is, man, it changes our life. And that I believe that's the greatest worship, the greatest thank you, is to find out why you were created, and
Right.
do it, and that's honor to whoever created you, if you will.
I absolutely agree.
You do sessions with people. Do you go out and do clearings, like you said? Is there places where people can go online and find out more about you, book clearings with you, or is that just something you do on your own? How does that work for you?
I'm not a professional. I just we contacted periodically because of the book, and I have a Facebook page for the book called Haunted Mobile Ghost, which is where I dip in and out of. Try to put interesting things on there, and I do book reviews and stuff like that because I know people like me love ghost books. So try to promote the best ones I can find that I've enjoyed the most. I do that. My main focus right now is working with tarot as a tool for soul growth and expansion. And so I have a Facebook page also where I post every day. Not a New Orleans Cathedral Square type thing where we say today's card is this. It means this, this, and this, and gives you a laundry list. But I try to write a little bit about the energetic symbology of the card and how it touches all of our lives, just to try to. We talked about ghosts and paranormal being a gateway into more mysticism, and that's definitely where it's taken me. And particularly right now, my focus a lot is on the work with tarot on the Facebook page, which is called Polly's Fancy European Tarot.
Awesome,
I
awesome.
can't even explain.
Yeah, I'll take the links and we'll put the links in the show notes so people can check it out. And I do get a lot of questions about tarot and a lot of questions about Christians having questions about divination and those things. And my work is to show the link in the scriptures of that terminology. There was many different tools that the prophets and disciples and those guys used to get clear answers to divine. And so definitely the energy that you're bringing to the table and getting clear results, being clairvoyant with it, letting people tap in for themselves and empowering people. And that's one thing I'm picking up from you. It's not just, hey, come to me. No, you can get answers yourself, teaching people how to do that. And that's huge.
Yes. And tarot is just another tool. It's just another tool. It's like, if you work with your dreams, that's a tool. If you work with tarot, that's a tool. If you read the clouds, if you look for signs, if you ask the angels to send you a sign, you're just using tools and structure to help you connect with your own inner knowing and your own connection with the divine. And the tarot, the way I do it is psychic weather forecast. It says these are kind of some energies coming in. This is how you might work with them. This is how they might manifest in your life, and here's a way to navigate through that. So I use tarot as a tool for personal growth very much.
Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome. Yeah. People don't understand that. It's we compartmentalize. It's the box. To put that in a box and okay, that's what that is. And I gotta think I'm filming the sun right now and getting all types of wild anomalies on camera. Filming the sun. And people are like, you better be careful. That's divination. We're not supposed to film the sun. It's like, they didn't do that in the Bible. It's like, well, they didn't have cell phones, but they had other mirrors and technology where they couldn't look directly at the sun, but they could look at one of the rays of the sun they would gaze into the water with light reflecting off the water. All of these technologies, spiritual technologies, tools that the biblical people did. And that's, I love it makes a lot of people mad because you got it figured out. No, you don't. We don't. We got to keep asking questions. We got to keep digging because there's more to it. And there's some beautiful things that we were left by people and by God that we can tap in. And tarot's one of them. Dreams. They're in the same conversation as prayer. And that disconnect is what I'm trying to reconnect. If you pray and use your mouth to formulate a sentence and God hears you and is going to give you an answer, that's a form of divination. It doesn't mean, like, I don't know, we've demonized that word. And so
I think it was easily turned into a caricature, and you can make any kind of divination the bad guy in anything.
To take the power away.
Yeah, it takes you, and certainly you run into shysters and bad people who will say, here, let me read your cards. Oh my gosh, something terrible is going to happen. You must come back to me next week with $100 so I can continue to lead you through this terrible situation. And that's certainly not how I look at it. I wish everybody would look at the symbology in their life, whether they're using a tool like tarot or like you studying the sky and looking at your environment and seeing how the divine is speaking to us constantly through nature, through the natural world, through things that happen. We're so in touch and we filter it out. It must drive our creator absolutely nuts that we filter out the communication that's coming back and forth all the time. But that's fast food. That's fast food life, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we got to get out of that.
Yeah.
I get depressed because when I get in nature, I'm like, oh, I got so much I got to do. I got to get out, and I'm putting off, because you got to really give yourself to the moment, you know? And it's like, if I had my way, I'd just stay out here, you know? But then who's going to pay the bill? There's no bills out there. Like, there's a place that
Right.
exists that is reality, that all of these things that we've created, these constructs, that they don't exist and they won't exist, you know, in
Yeah,
the
we're
world to
jumping.
come. Not like this.
We're jumping back and forth. We're jumping back and forth between those realities all the time. Um, and so when you do that, you can see how some people might just want a very traditional, structured, please just tell me what to do. I don't want to have to
Oh yeah,
poke at my brain and expand this, and please just tell me what to do, because
for sure,
life is challenging.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, there's no, yeah, it for me, things changed, and it sounds like for you, when you quit trying to change anybody, or convince anybody. Like this
Right.
conversation, even the video footage that I share, there's a huge part of me that I don't want to share any of it, because I know it's open to mockery and scrutiny and those things. So I'd rather not throw my pearls before swine. But
Right.
they're like, hey, I'm at, I'm at the place now, which is a beautiful place, that I don't have to convert anyone. I don't have to convince anyone. This is what I like to do. This is what is very beautiful, and it means something to me. And
Mhm.
it just so happens to resonate that same way with other people, versus trying to finagle and convert you
Right.
and knock on your door and get you to win you to a faith or something. I don't think it was ever meant to be that way.
No, I mean, Jesus never beat anybody's head in. He just says, here I am. Here's what I do. This is where I'm coming from. Does this work for you? If so, great. If not, do your thing.
Yeah, he
But
said you're free to
I'll
go.
still be here.
Are y'all gonna leave
Right.
me like everybody else? He, 5,000 people. He's feeding, as long as he's bringing food and giving it to them
Right.
palatable, they're listening. But he gives it to them straight, and they're like, yeah, this isn't for us, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And cool, it doesn't have to be. There's a million other things that probably are.
Right.
So
Right. He
just
didn't care. He was not checking his social media. He was not looking at the polls to see how am I trending? Is my ministry, is it trending? He didn't care. He's like, I'm here. I'm going to do my thing. And that's one thing that I talk about in one of the divination systems I use is called Lenormand. And there's a card in Lenormand that is the cross, the crucifix. And I always, when that card comes up, I always try to tell people this is a card of what I call divine selfishness. And I use the example of Jesus. If Jesus, near the end of his life, he could have made so many people happy, his mother, his followers, everybody who loved him. If he had said, you know what, you're right, I'm going to go home. I'm going to just be a teacher and a rabbi. It's cool. I won't make the Romans mad or the Pharisees mad anymore. You're right. I know this is really hurting you. As everyone was, terrified of losing him and the people who loved him so much.
yeah,
And he could have made their lives so much easier if he had denied his own mission. But because he had that divine selfishness to say, I must go this way. This is between me and God. This is how I've got to do it. And I'm so sorry that it causes you pain, but I'm not going to avert off my mission in order to make you not be sad. I've got to do this. And I always see that as such a holy thing, that divine selfishness. Um, you gotta be who you are.
yeah,
You gotta be on the path that you were set on and that you were created to do. You gotta be you. Not comparing myself to something as marvelous as what Jesus did, but that was also yet another example to everybody. Be here, be yourself, do your thing. Don't worry about what other people think.
yeah,
It's between you and God.
yeah, yeah. So good, so good. Well, I enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and my community. And we'll have to do it again, and maybe do something in the physical. Maybe do it in person interview or something like that, since you're so close. So it'd be awesome.
Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for your willingness to go far afield with this far-ranging conversation.
Oh
I
man,
really
it's
appreciate that. That was
I'm
fun.
a student, and so how can you ever
too.
pretend
too.
to have anything figured out? Because it's evolving, and everybody has a piece of it. And these
Yeah,
conversations
right.
help. They help many people, and they're helping me, and there's life in it. These are life-giving conversations, and to meet people, not for everybody. Some people won't listen to this one, but as far as we've gone into this talk, there's people still listening now. I always tell them, hey, let us know in the comments if you're still listening this far in, because those are the real ride or die people who are looking.
Yeah, those are our people.
They
right?
feel something when you speak. It's like, man, it's an alignment. I need somebody to. I've never heard that before, and it's worth it. So much worth it. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll do it again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I sure appreciate it.
Your way so much higher than mine, so much higher than mine, so much deeper than mine, so much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the TruthSeekah Podcast, head over to TruthSeekah.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah.